Hi besties, welcome to my channel. My name is Elizabeth. Today's tutorial, I'll be sharing with us how to cut a cupped corset with yoke and also with sleeves. So if this is your first time coming across my channel, thank you so much for stopping by. Please click on the subscribe button below and do not forget to give this video a thumbs up. That being said, let's get to it. Right now I have my basic bodice pattern already drafted in order not to make the video too long. Next thing I will do is to measure what I have between my neck width and my shoulder slope. For me, I have 4 inches and I'm just going to divide that by 2. Then I'm going to use my straight ruler to connect from that point to my bust point. Next, come to the under bust line and take ½ inch from the already existing dart on both sides. And then with the help of my curved ruler, I'm going to connect the new dart leg to my bust point, just like you see me do. I'll also do the same thing on the other side of the dart. From the dart, connect straight to the bust point. Notice how I'm placing my ruler so that you get a good curve, a curve that is not too curvy and also not straight. From that dart leg, you're going to connect with a straight ruler back to the dart on the waist, just like you see on your screen. Next is to determine how open you want your chest area to be, how exposed you want your boobs to be. If you do not want it exposed, you can go up from the chest line by 1.5 inches, or you take the measurement between your bust point to your under bust line and then you go up by whatever that gives you from the bust point and then connect it into a straight line, just like you see. For me, I just came off by 1.5 inches from my chest line. On that new chest line, go out by ½ inch on both sides and then connect it to the bust point, just like you see on the screen. Next thing is to draw out the neckline. Now this depends on how deep you want the center front to be. You can decide to maintain the chest line or connect to the bust point, or even go down from the bust point by 1 inch. That totally depends on what you want. So for me, I'm just going to be maintaining the chest line. So from my chest line, I connected a curve back to the dart leg, just like you see. And then for my bust bridge, that little opening between the corsets, I'm going to come in by ½ inch from the chest line and also on the under bust line, and I'll connect that into a straight line, just like you see on the screen. And from that ½ inch mark on the under bust, I'm going to measure out 1 inch in a diagonal form like angle 90, so as to guide me on how to draw the curve so it does not get too deep or too small. Then I'm going to place my ruler like so, making sure it touches that point, also the 1 inch I came out with, and also touching my bust point, just to get the first part of our cup, just like you see on the screen. Next thing is to close the dart at the upper part, just to make sure that both the dart going towards the center front and the one going towards the side front aligned. This is just to ensure that one part of the cup is no longer than the other, because sometimes the dart at the side front tends to be longer than the one towards the center front. So just to avoid that, you close it, pretend like you are closing up the dart, and then you blend in case yours is not equal. For me, as you can see, mine is equal, so I don't have any issue. And then to get the other cup, you're going to measure out from the center line, from your nipple to nipple point line. Basically, you place exactly the same thing you have by dividing your nipple to nipple point by 2 on that line, and then you mark that towards the center front on the bust point, and then you're just going to basically connect with a curve like so. Another thing is how you place your cut through. So you place it properly. Do not place it in such a way that the cup is going to be smaller you want to make sure there is enough room for your bust to sit in. So next thing is to close the upper part of the side cup. So you place your ruler on the dart leg like so, and then you connect to blend in with the curve you have on your armhole, just like you see on your screen. Next thing is to draw out the yoke, and to do that I'm going to be going in by 1 inch on my initial neck width. So from that neck width I'm going to come in by 1 inch, and then on that 1 inch I'm going to connect it down to the other cup, the tip of the other cup, just like you see on the screen. And after that I'm going to be tightening my yoke so that it does not gape on the neck. From that point I'm going to go up by 1/2 inch on the yoke, and then I'm going to use my straight ruler to connect it back to that curve. Just make sure it blends into that curve that you have there before. And then I'm going to be shading out the parts I do not need. So basically all the parts I'm shading here are the parts we're going to be cutting out later. I'm going to label that the yoke. And then the next thing to do is to come on the side seam line, come down by 1.5 inches, and then connect with a curve back to the top length, basically like so. Next I'm going to be closing up the waist dart, just so I can get my basque line to be equal to each other. If you do not do this, one part of your pattern is going to be longer than the other. So in order to avoid that, close up the waist darts and then you reconnect back to your blouse length, just like you see. You can see after opening it, the initial line was too long and then the other side was too short. So making it this way ensures that the lines are equal. We do not have a shortage on that part. And then I'm going to add my side seam allowance of 1.5 inches, and I'm just going to connect all of that together. Next is to label your pattern so you do not mix them up when you want to sew them together. So I'm just going to label that the center front, the side front. I'm going to label the cup 1, the one going towards the center, and the one going towards the side 2. I'm also going to indicate the bust point, and then I'll go in with my scissors to cut out my pattern. We are basically done with the drafting of the front pattern. Please look closely at the areas that I'm cutting so you do not mess up your pattern. After cutting, this is what the front part looks like. So we'll move to the back pattern. I've also gone ahead to draw out my back pattern, and the next thing I'll do is to go to the waistline on the nipple to nipple line and take my dart of 1/2 inch on both sides, just like you see me do. And then on the chest line, I'm going to be taking a dart of 0.25 inches on both sides. I took this dart just so I can tighten my back pattern on that area, and with the help of my stretch ruler I'm going to connect the dart on the waistline to the dart on the chest line, just like you're seeing on the screen. And I'm also going to do the same tightening on my hip line. On the hip line I'm also going to take a dart intake of 0.25 inches on both sides of nipple to nipple line, just like you see on the screen. And then I'm going to use my stretch ruler to connect the dart on that hip line to the darts on the waist line, just like you see me do. Next thing I'll do is to contour my center back on the waist area just to avoid zipper bulge. So from that waistline, I'm going to come in by 0.75 inches and also go out by 0.75 inches. That in total gives 1.5, which is going to be my zipper allowance. So for this corset, I'm making use of a zipper. It will not have any loop at the back. It's just going to be a zipper. And from that first 0.75 inches I marked from the waistline, I'm going to connect with my ruler to the top of my neckline, just like so. And on the other part, I'm also going to connect to the top of the neckline. And I'm also going to connect from the waistline back to the hem of my top, just like you see on the screen. And then on this waistline at the side seam area, I'm going to be returning that 0.75 inches I came in by on the waistline. Just go out by that same 0.75 inches on the waistline and then reconnect it back to your chest line and also to the blouse length. Remember on the front pattern, we came down from the waistline by 1.5 inches. So on the back part too, we're going to be coming down by that same 1.5 inches on the waistline, and I'll further mark that in multiple places just so I can have a straight line. That will serve as my back blouse length. I hope you understand that. Next, I'm going to be shading out the areas that I don't need. So just to avoid confusion, I went ahead to mark out the lines that we'll be needing at this back pattern with another color of a marker pen. So the areas that I'm marking with another color of marker pen are the areas that we actually need to make the back piece of this corset. So I'm just going to trace out the areas that I need just so you understand and do not get confused. On the chest line at that point, I'm going to be coming down by 1.5 inches, and then I'm going to use my curved ruler to connect it back to the armhole point, just like you see on the screen. To draw out the back yoke, I'm also going to repeat the same thing I did for the front yoke. From the basic neck width of 3 inches, I will come in by 1 inch, and I'll use my ruler to connect from the yoke point to that leg, just like you see on the screen. I'm just going to label that the back yoke. Next, I'm also going to tighten the back yoke. On that point, I'll go up by 1/2 of an inch and then connect it back to the armhole point, just like you see. So to ensure that that part also aligns, I'm just going to close up the dot I have in that area, and then I'll use my curved ruler to reblend the neckline. And then I'm going to label my pattern. Next, I will add my stitching allowance of 1.5 inches and then proceed to cut out my pattern. So after cutting, here is what the back pattern looks like. Thank you so much for watching. In the next video, I'm going to be sharing how to sew these pieces together to form a beautiful top. If you are yet to subscribe to my channel, please kindly click on the subscribe button below, and do not forget to give this video a thumbs up and also turn on the post notification bell so that you get notified whenever I post a new video. See you in my next one. Bye.